next to urgent calls for more government action from those who say their lives have been decimated by long COVID.
Well, incredibly, today marks 5 years since the UK's first coronavirus case was discovered in York. But half a decade on, and hundreds in our region are still suffering with the long-term effects of the virus.
Long COVID takes many forms. Often it causes fatigue, breathlessness and brain fog. But with no cure, those suffering can only try to manage their symptoms, as Ben Bason's been finding out.
I was an extremely active person. I was a triathlon runner, swimmer, cyclist. I was training for a marathon.
For Fran, it's hard to remember the life she once led. Even after contracting a mild case of ME, she still managed to work as a vet. But COVID changed all of that, leaving her almost completely bedbound with debilitating fatigue, weakness and chronic vertigo. She's left the house once in the last 2 years.
I can't walk or stand. I can only leave my room once a day to the toilet. I have to use a commode next to my bed, and I'm fully reliant on care from my family. It's unimaginable unless you've been through it. I think, life decimating, basically.
For Army veteran Paula, it almost became too much. After her previously active life, she was bedridden for 6 weeks and off work for 8 months after she caught COVID for the third time.
I became incredibly depressed to the point where I just didn't want to be here anymore. I couldn't live. If this was my life, then I didn't want that life.
There is NHS support for those suffering with long COVID. Specialist clinics like this one in Doncaster were set up across the country during the pandemic.
Just go to the top floor.
But with no cure or official treatment for the whole condition, it can only help patients manage their symptoms.
It's been trial and error, so at the beginning it was just putting in the treatment pathways and the assessment approaches that we thought we would need to by using therapy skills that we've already got as therapists and clinicians.
What is your fatigue like at the minute?
One day I could be all right, next minute I could be really, really tired.
By tackling each symptom, the team in Doncaster have been making a real difference. They offer a wide range of help. Card exercises like this have been helping Tracy, who suffered with memory problems after COVID.
So I've been having lots of difficulty in conversations where I meant to remember somebody's name or remember to do something. So I've had to now rely on writing lots of things down.
Patients like Tracy are on the slow path to recovery, but for others, the future looks less bright.
We absolutely need the government to be not just talking the talk, but walking the walk with when it comes to research and funding. We need, ring-fenced funding for research into these conditions, which are drastically underfunded.
Some people who've got long COVID have come to accept the fact that they may never fully recover. And although some efforts are undoubtedly easing the suffering, many long for a research breakthrough to help them get their lives back to some form of normality.
Well, Ben joins us in the studio now, and you have to have sympathy for anybody who's suffering from long COVID. But Ben, how much progress has been made in understanding long COVID?
Well, Ian, I looked into long COVID for a story in 2022, and back then the condition was still fairly new and experts were trying to get their heads around it still. To be honest, nearly 3 years later, we're not a huge amount further forward. There has been some good research on how it affects people, but scientists are still searching for that silver bullet, really, which is the biological cause of long COVID. If they knew that, then it'd be easier for them to develop medication and treatments for the whole of the condition. But experts in our region worry that there's less of an appetite now for that kind of research.
So there's a lack of interest or a loss of interest in COVID and long COVID generally, because we sort of moved on as a society and decided we're not really as interested in it anymore. Funding agencies were very interested in COVID initially because it was a significant health problem, but funding has sort of dried up and there isn't as much funding for long COVID as there used to be.
So Ben, what has the government had to say about this?
Well, the Department of Health told me that they're committed to ensuring that there's quality services for those who suffer with long COVID across the country. In a statement, they said no single treatment currently exists for long COVID, which is why we provide funding for more research into the condition, including clinical trials to test and compare different treatments.
Ben, thank you very much indeed.